China copied its way to building a world-class air-to-air missile. On September 24, 1958, disaster loomed for China's People's Liberation Army Air Force, PLAAF, as its jets plummeted into Wenzhou Bay. For several days, its J-5 Fresco jets, license-built Soviet MiG-17s, had jousted with Taiwan's US-supplied F-86F Sabre jets, leveraging their higher service ceiling to safely cruise above the Sabres unbothered until ready to pounce. But things didn't go according to the PLAAF's plan that day, because a few months earlier in June, the US Navy secretly upgraded 20 of Taiwan's Sabres to launch the GAR-9 Sidewinder, soon redesignated the AIM-9B, then a state-of-the-art missile. The heat-seeking sorcery of Sidewinders fired by Sabres from below caught PLAAF pilots unprepared. After all, guided air-to-air missiles had never before been used in combat. The J-5s hastily merged downwards into a dogfight with the Sabres, which went badly, with 10 PLAAF jets lost, 3 or 4 of them downed by Sidewinders. By the time the so-called Second Taiwan Strait crisis came to its conclusion that December, Taiwan's Sabre pilots claimed they downed 31 MiGs for the loss of 2 F-86s. PLAAF history insists its fighters scored 14 kills for 5 losses. Though Taiwan's Sabres still scored plenty of gun kills, they provided early evidence that air-to-air missiles, AMs, not machine guns, cannons, or even unguided rockets, would eventually dominate air-to-air warfare, and that China and its Soviet allies had fallen behind. While a year earlier the Soviets first had the K-5, a short-range radar-guided missile which China acquired for license production after the crisis under the designation Thunderbolt 1, or PL-1, it's short-range and inflexible. Radar guidance system led PL-1 production to end early in 1970. However, the skirmishes with Taiwan wound up having a big silver lining for China and the Soviet Union when, on September 28, a damaged MiG-17 managed to limp back to base with an unexploded Sidewinder missile embedded in its fuselage. Though unsuccessful in reverse engineering the Sidewinder, China negotiated its release to the Soviet Union, which successfully cloned the weapon into the K-13 missile, NATO codename AA-2 Atoll. Starting in the mid-1960s, North Vietnamese MiG-21 fighters began using K-13s to shoot down dozens of U.S. warplanes. Despite China-USSR relations collapsing in June 1960, in 1961 the Soviets honored their promise and gave China K-13 missiles and schematics. It took roughly a decade more for mass production of China's copy of the Soviet copy of the Sidewinder to begin under the designation PL-2. For 4 more decades, Chinese engineers repeatedly acquired additional foreign missiles and figured out how to produce and improve upon them. Finally, by the 2000s and 2010s, China's designers hit a turning point, fielding designs equaling or in some cases exceeding performance of rival Western and Russian armaments. Sidewinders and Sparrows with Chinese characteristics. Based on the 5-inch diameter hull of the Zuni unguided rocket, the AIM-9B was more practical than the K-5/PL-1, but it still had stringent limitations. It had to be aimed extremely precisely to lock on no more than 4 degrees of deviation from the target and strictly from behind it, that aircraft's hot engine exhaust, so using them against enemies approaching head-on was a no-go. It also needed to be aimed away from the sun, which tended to lure missiles astray. The PL-2 was only authorized for mass production in 1972. With 2,950 delivered by the time production was closed in 1983. Poor performance in tests during the 1970s, including premature detonation of the proximity fuse and sunlocking, caused rounds to be returned to factories for refurbishing. Chinese engineers made several attempts to improve the PL-2, starting with the PL-3, which began testing in 1968. However, disruption caused by the Cultural Revolution so delayed R&D efforts that it was cancelled in 1980. In 1977, China also obtained 2 newer AIM-9E Sidewinders, which it used to create the improved PL-2B with a new seeker, greater range, from 4.7 miles to 6 miles, and a new cooling system. The 612th Institute, now called Luoyang Electro-Optics Technology Development, sought to make a radar-guided Sidewinder called PL-5A, comparable to the AIM-9C and K-13 air missiles, but it too was cancelled in 1983. However, a PL-5B model reverting to infrared guidance finally entered production in 1986 with its range boosted to 10 miles. China managed to export the lightweight PL-5s and improved PL-5EIs, boasting low-smoke engines, laser proximity fuses, and dual-band IR seekers, to 10 countries in Asia, Africa, and South America. PL-5s remain in common use on older Chinese jets unable to carry larger missiles. In 1966, 612 Institute also began developing a longer-range radar-guided PL-4 missile influenced by an American AIM-7D Sparrow recovered by North Vietnam and passed on to China, intended to arm a planned J-9 supersonic. Interceptor. The Cultural Revolution's turmoil caused progress on both to slow to a crawl, leading to their cancellation for premature obsolescence between 1980 and 1984. Though PLAAF's supersonic J-6 fighters, based on Soviet MiG-19, could carry up to 4 PL-2s and shot down at least 6 U.S. military jets between 1965 and 1967, mostly over the South China Sea, it's likely that Chinese air-to-air missiles hadn't yet reached operational use by then, which implies the PLAAF may have yet to use any air-to-air missiles in combat. This article originally conveyed a source stating that the PL-2 missile was fielded alongside similar Sidewinders on export J-6 jets, FSAXS, by Pakistan in a 1971 air war with India, particularly in 2 engagements with Indian Su-7 jets. However, given a second look at the timeline of PL-2 production and its integration onto the Guizhou J-6A upgrade only in 1975 leaves the author skeptical these missiles were in PAF serve.